It's time for the Sum of the Above Education News Comedy Quiz, the show where a bunch of well-meaning adults poke fun at the latest news and policy decisions impacting public schools across the country. Well, students like me actually have to live with the reality each day. And here are your hosts, Alex Cacciatani and Paul Richmond.
Hey, a huge thanks to our great student announcer, and give it up too for our in-show band, Tommy Dunbar and the high school equivalents. I'm Alex Cacciatani, education speaker, author, and California Teacher of the Year, and this is the show where we invite you to play along with two special guest contestants as we help you get informed, inspired, and hopefully laugh some about our ever-changing world of education. It's my pleasure to be back in the Quizmaster's chair this month alongside my friend and all-purpose education policy guy. It's Paul Richmond.
Hey, thanks, Alex. And you're looking pretty good in that Quizmaster's chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I am pumped up because we've got two special guests after my own heart. They're both leaders from the world of education funding and policy.
Ooh.
In fact, if there was a School Funding Advocates Hall of Fame, these two people would definitely be in it. Each of them has played a vital role for years, shaping education funding decisions and policies within both the California and national education ecosystems.
Yeah, wow. Well, that sounds very policy wonky to me, Paul.
Yes, and I promise we're going to have a lot of fun. Our first guest contestant has dedicated her career to social and public good through her advocacy for children and students. She currently serves as Chief Executive Officer for WestEd, a national nonprofit, nonpartisan research agency. And she is nationally recognized for her work on major policy changes related to early learning, K-14 funding, and education accountability systems. It's Jannelle Kubinec. Hey, Jannelle.
Woo. Hi, Paul. Hi, Alex. It's great to be here with you today.
Next, he's the president and founding partner of Capital Advisors Group and a former leader with both the California Association of School Business Officials and the California School Boards Association. And whenever a legislator, reporter, or school district superintendent wants to know more about a school funding issue, this is often the guy at the top of their speed dial. It's Kevin Gordon.
Yeah.
Hey, Kevin.
Woo.
Hey, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Well, Kevin and Jannelle, it is so great to have you here. There are so many things that happen outside of our schools that have a huge impact on what occurs inside schools and classrooms. And I know the two of you, as education funding and policy advocates, you really help drive a lot of that. Of course, at the same time, things like school finance aren't usually known as fertile ground for comedy. So one important question out of the gate: is there a wilder or crazier side to school finance and education policy that perhaps only people like the two of you know about and are willing to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is the wild and crazy side is that you'd be floored by how many people in the Capitol building, how many of them really understand the nuances of school finance. It's complicated, and they get frustrated by that because it's just this Byzantine sort of patchwork of formulas, and they're well intended. I mean, it's about trying to make sure that the money goes out in a direction they want it to go out, and eligibility of what kids we're targeting and all that kind of stuff. So you get these really crazy formulas that it ends up a pretty small number of people end up becoming pretty expert at. So the wildest thing is that almost nobody knows how it works.
So I would add to that and say, what Kevin's pointing out is, hey, there's lots of formulas. They're all like people in this Byzantine way. But quite frankly, there is a spreadsheet that doesn't have very many lines that if you give it 3 inputs, you get the Prop 98 output, which is how big is the pie for K-12 K-14 education? And, as a 24-year-old, I came to the legislative analyst office and they handed me that spreadsheet. And the hardest thing for me was I came from grad school where finding a $20 bill in a pocket was a great thing. And I had to try to read the zeros and say, is that millions or billions? This is crazy.
Well, Paul, I got to say, I'm impressed. We asked for wild and crazy stories and dove right into spreadsheets and funding formulas. So we are off to a great start. All right, Kevin and Jannelle, it's time for our first quiz game, something we call Surfing the Headlines. Hit it, Tommy. Okay, I'm going to ask each of you a question about an education news story that made waves this month. A correct answer is worth 1 point unless Paul or I arbitrarily decide it should be worth more, because the way our show works is we award points the way Health and Human Services Secretary Robert Kennedy awards or takes away research contracts, seemingly at a whim. Also important, at the end of the show, the contestant with the fewest points has to come back and join us again in the future. So if you want to be done with us for good, you have to earn the most points. Otherwise, we invite you back. Got it?
Got it.
All right, Kevin. The first Surfing the Headlines question is for you, and this one should be right in your wheelhouse. The Trump administration recently released details of its proposal calling for a 15% cut to what?
It would be the 15% cut to the U.S. Department of Education budget for fiscal year 2026.
Nailed it. You are correct. It is the proposed cut to the U.S. Department of Education budget. The budget request to Congress includes a $12 billion or 15% reduction below the current appropriation for the department that the president, of course, is attempting to shut down. Overall, the budget proposal leaves at previous levels Title I funding, which is the largest pot of money that supports districts serving low-income students. But the proposal also asks Congress to eliminate or consolidate dozens of other grant programs that provide services for specific students and programs such as English learners, homeless students, students with disabilities, rural schools, teacher training and professional development, education research, and data collection. Symptoms of this proposal may also include headaches, drowsiness, itchy eyes, irritable bowels, and vomiting in one's own mouth. So, Kevin and Jannelle, did I get some of those budget details right? I mean, we had to know this budget axe was going to be swinging, but is this proposal from the administration what you expected?
Yeah, I mean, President Trump had proposed cuts every single year of his first administration, not terribly unlike these, and didn't get them because Congress, who has power of the purse, didn't go along. So he was actually never able to get the cuts that he had proposed, even though they had majorities back then as well. And so I think we're going to see very likely a repeat of some of this again, because this budget is going to require that it overcomes the 60 vote requirement we called filibuster in the U.S. Senate. That means you're going to have to get 7 Democrats in the U.S. Senate to go along with his budget proposal. And I always joke around saying, if they do what they do best, which is nothing, then we're probably safe from any cuts. So that's kind of what we're going to rely on now. There are a lot of other moving parts here that could change that dynamic. But, if history is any guide, we end up getting a continuing resolution because they cannot pass a budget. They don't have the votes. A continuing resolution basically relies upon what you got in the last authorized budget, which is 2024. So it wouldn't be great. We wouldn't be getting increases, but we wouldn't see these cuts.
But I also think there's another dynamic in play, which is that we aren't seeing funds issued even when they've been approved. So the FY25 money's there, it hasn't gone out. So the looming threat of rescission, meaning we don't give you the money because it wasn't spent. So we have an example in FY25 of we don't see those cuts present, but we also don't see the money flowing. And so some of that is the Department of Education without people to administer funds and get it out to places. We've seen this happening to states in terms of they're not able to access or get paid for monies that are approved in the budget, but there's also programs that have been cut that the money's still in the budget. So we're actually in an interesting time with the traditions, as Kevin notes about filibuster, which we've always had those in the discussion, but now we have new words that we're using in our budget discussions about rescissions and about whether or not there's going to be a department, how to go about that. So there's a whole lot of layers of this that make this a different year, I'd say, all around.
Yeah, fascinating. I'm curious to ask the two of you, are there some good things that could come out of this budget proposal?
I think it kind of depends on where you live, right? I mean, what region of the country you're at, and what your sort of disposition is relative to the bureaucracy we know as the U.S. Department of Ed. When the president and the current administration and even congressional leaders on the Republican side talk about block granting, that can be seen as a really good thing. As you're sort of cutting through the bureaucracy and getting money directly out to states, and maybe it could be good. The problem is they can't resist cutting, pretty significantly the overall amount of money. So one of the block grants they have in the proposal is a block grant that's of $2 billion, and you can use it any way you want across 18 different purposes for 18 programs that previously existed and were funded. The problem is the total amount of those total programs was $6.5 billion. So it's good on local control a little bit, but bad on total resources that are sort of available.
Yeah, and I think these kinds of, when you look and you're faced with cuts, you do find what matters. And an example would be Head Start, right? That was an initial, we're going to cut Head Start, lots of concern, and an ability to see it coming back into shape. And I think we can't take anything for granted. So if anything, I think those that support public education, we got to ask ourselves what really matters, and how are we going to make that clear, and how we, advocate for programs, advocate for kids, and engage and do the very best with every dollar we have.
So I am wondering, like, as school funding advocates, when there's huge budget cuts on the table, in one silver lining for you, that's sort of like good job security for people like you, right?
Well, I always say, as long as government has the capacity to usually screw things up, we'll be fully employed. and this could be a banner year.
Okay, the next Surfing the Headlines question is for you, Jannelle. According to a recent Gallup poll, 4 in 10 U.S. adults wish they had learned more what in middle or high school?
4 in 10. I'm going to say math.
You got it. That's right. 4 in 10 wish they had learned more math skills. As part of the survey, adults were also asked what 3 emotions best describe how doing math made them feel. The top 3 responses were challenged, interested, and confused, which, interestingly, were the same top 3 ways adults said parenting made them feel. Also, overall, according to the survey, 4/5 of all respondents said they wish they had specifically learned more about fractions, while the other half said they wish they had not. Sorry, bad math joke, folks. Hopefully at least a third of you laughed.
We were going to award an extra point to either of them if they laughed, but I don't think there's a point to give, Alex. Sorry.
Well, Alex, in a serious way, I think what you're bringing up is something really important that in my work at WestEd, we've thought a lot about and done some work on, which is how important it is for people to see themselves with the sense of they can do math, and that sense of math identity. I just came, I think it was last week, from a screening of a documentary called Count It Out, which is just amazing. And people should seek this out because it talks about experiences of kids like around the country and learning math and or struggling with math. And you hear exactly the statements that were captured in that Gallup poll, which is, I can't do this. I want to be a nurse, but there's no way if I don't do the math. And I've tried the class 3 times and I'm just not a math person. And what this documentary shows is everyone can be a math person. You just got to like make it about what people see in the world. And the documentary goes a step further, which is for us to have a functional democracy, people have to have math abilities. They have to see themselves as math learners, because of all joking aside, those fractions you just rattled off, we get hit with them every day, all day long, when people say, you know, the economy's unemployment's at 4%. Well, what does that mean? Or what percentage of the budget? So 15% of the budget. Well, of what and how much? We know when we talk about, you know, maps of who gets to vote and how we're seeing turnout. Well, that's all math. It's all numbers. So our ability to have a math identity is more than just I'm good at math. It really is about us engaging with each other and being able to both understand the world and then laugh at jokes like you just shared with us.
Yeah, and I love that connection, Jannelle, between math and civic education in particular. That's great.
Yeah, kind of like what Janelle referred to. I think somehow in our society, it's become okay to think that you are bad at math or to have been bad at math. And we all know what happens when you go out to dinner with a group of friends and the check comes and somebody grabs it and says, okay, who's good at math? Who's going to lead us through this check splitting up thing? And, anyone who says, not me, I was never good at math. Well, we just kind of accept that.
You know, one of the things my entire career, I've always just handed the check over to Kevin at the end of the meal.
Yeah, I take full advantage of people who say at the lunch they don't know math.
Yeah, you're laughing, Paul, but I have a feeling you've been paying for all of Kevin's drinks for a long time.
No, probably the opposite. Well, speaking of math skills, it's time for our next game, and it's one we call Education Data Points of the Month, or EDP-OTM, since in education we love our acronyms. And I'm going to give each of you a number and 3 options, and you have to guess what that number or data point actually represents. So, Kevin, the first data point is for you, and it is 24. Is this A, the average number of announcements, 24, that interrupt classroom instruction during a typical school day, according to a new study? Is it B, 24, the number of times during her recent testimony before Congress that U.S. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon referred to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the IDEA, as, quote, that law that has something to do with students and IDs? Or is it C, the number of states, 24, that have passed laws banning or restricting cell phone use at school?
I think I'm going to go with C.
Going with C, cell phone bans, and that is correct. Florida was the first state to ban them in 2023, and many states, both red and blue, have since passed laws. And the laws range from banning phones altogether on school grounds to banning their use during class time, to requiring individual school districts to adopt policies restricting their use. So limiting cell phone use, policymakers argue, will benefit students' mental health and learning, at least for the hours that they're at school. This latest legislative flurry follows other notorious classroom bans from past decades that you may remember, including the banning of pagers and even Pokemon trading cards.
I think this is one of that we feel like we're caught at this moment of tension where we want to have students attentive, and then at the same time, we want them to be with technology. So it's how do you strike that balance, right? So we want to have, I think, kids develop a very healthy relationship with technology as a resource to help them navigate both the, being aware and knowledgeable, and also protecting them from too much stuff that we find anxiety creating. And I think these bans are one experiment that we'll be working through to say, do you have kids performing with better outcomes as they've had less screen time, but they still have a lot of opportunities for screen time. So how are we teaching them to engage with screens in a productive way?
Yeah, well, and I know that in a lot of places, the way the bans work is, students can bring their phone onto campus, but when they go inside a classroom, they then have to leave their device in one of those hanging storage sleeves or cubbies. I did see one student comment on social media that he was going to go out and buy a burner phone just to leave it in the storage sleeve.
Yeah, never underestimate their ability to get around the brilliant things that some of the adults try to create to limit their use.
All right. Absolutely. And by the way, students, if you're listening and you subscribe to our podcast on Apple or Spotify, we'll send you our free toolkit on how to get around cell phone bans. All right. Jannelle, this next data point question is for you, and the number is 10,300. Is this A, the number of emails that the New York City Public Schools chancellor receives each day? Is it B, 10,300, the total number of task forces that California Superintendent of Public Instruction Tony Thurmond has created since he took office? Or is it C, the amount of public taxpayer dollars, 10,300 per student, that families in Texas will be eligible to receive and spend at private schools as a result of a new voucher bill signed into law?
Oh, goodness. Well, I'm pretty sure it's not A or B. Having met the New York commissioner and seeing her walk about, she could get a lot of fan mail, but I don't think that's it. And even that's a high number for California for having commission. So I will say C.
That's absolutely right. It is C, school vouchers. And according to the Texas Tribune, Senate Bill 2, signed into law by Texas Governor Greg Abbott, allows families to use public taxpayer dollars to fund their children's education at an accredited private school or to pay for a wide range of school-related expenses. The money will flow from the state to families through what are called education savings accounts. And at least 18 states have now created some type of voucher or account program. But Texas is, when it launches in 2026, it will be one of the nation's largest. So, anyone got a good voucher joke?
Yeah, I would say not a joke, but I do think it's a question. Is what we're seeing with vouchers or education savings accounts? I mean, is it a movement or a moment? And I think that is a big question when it comes to what's going to happen with resources of states. So as we've seen states introduce these programs, in many cases, the demand increases beyond what was going to public schools because of the number of kids. And so we're seeing pressures on state budgets that have expanded these programs. And it does, you look at the pie of funds that are there, the slices got distributed differently. Will we see states saying, gosh, like, how are we going to keep funding this? Particularly if we give amounts equivalent to or very close to, or even in some cases above what we provide to our public school system on a per student basis.
Mm-hmm. And there was a report about a similar voucher program to the one Texas is going to launch, a similar program that's already operating in North Carolina that showed most of the recipients of these educational savings accounts, more than 90%, were families that were already sending their children to private schools.
Yeah, that's long been one of the biggest criticisms of, vouchers generally, is that who's really benefiting from them.
Fascinating. Well, I'll close this section with a bonus question for either of you. According to this new law, students participating in the new Texas voucher program will not have to do what? Kevin, Jannelle, what will they not have to do?
Wow. Graduate?
Close.
I was going to say, go to school.
I'll give you a hint. It used to involve a number 2 pencil, but now it's pretty much done online.
No testing.
Well, they don't have to take the state standardized test. The law says students utilizing the vouchers at private schools must take a nationally recognized exam of the private school's choosing, but they are not required to administer the same standardized tests that public school kids take each year.
Wow.
All right. I think we're giving the point to Jannelle because she did say testing. And now, a word from our sponsor.
Howdy, y'all. This is Tammy Wanda Sue, and I'm the principal of Plano Private School for Wiccans. Did y'all know that the legislature of our great state is giving each and every one of you parents $10,000 so you can send your precious child to my school? We have all your typical required curriculum like language arts and social studies and mathematics. Plus, we offer several guided pathways for students to choose from, including healing arts, neo-paganism, advanced spellcraft, and engineering. At Plano School for Wiccans, we are fully accredited by the state of Texas, which, mind you, is not as difficult as that may seem. So listen, sugar, when you receive that letter from the state, be sure to mark that box that says you'd like your little one to attend my school. The state will then send you a voucher. The state will put some money in your own personal education savings account. I forgot we're not supposed to say the V word. And then you just write us a check. Easy peasy. And this month only, we have a special offer on tuition. It used to only cost $6,500 per year to attend our school, but thanks to the new law, we can now charge you $10,000 and still not a penny needs to come out of your own pocket. That's more money for us and less for those other kids in those scary public schools. Thank you, Texas Governor and State Legislature.
And now, back to our show. Welcome back to Some of the Above, and thanks to our in-show band, Tommy Dunbar and the High School Equivalents. And we have an Education Advocate showdown going on here. Our score was Jannelle 3 and Kevin 2. However, after applying a 15% cut to all scores, that would put Kevin at oh, shoot, I'm also one of those people that didn't do well in math. So anyway, we'll come back to the score. But this is the time for you listeners to get to know our guests a bit better. So Kevin, I want to start with you. You've worked with lots of presidential administrations and many, many governors. Is there a particular elected leader who you've had to deliver a particularly difficult message to?
What comes to mind is... And we have this almost perennially, is that, they're well intended, but some pretty harebrained ideas that sometimes come out of some of our top leaders in the state. And the bottom line is, if you ever want a second meeting, you avoid, pretty harsh criticism or bluntness. You find a clever way to get them to a good place. And so there was a governor, some years back who had, quite a number of these interesting ideas that were not very roundly welcomed by the education community. And the way we sort of reacted to it was to say, look, the governor's heart is in the right place, and we intend to do everything we can to make that proposal as positive and as good as it could be. And I remember seeing him shortly after he read that. And he said, by the way, very clever way of giving me sort of the direction that I'm probably not headed, quite appropriately on. And so one of the things you have to sort of try to be diplomatic about getting people to go in a direction that you want to go. So yeah, not difficult conversations if you kind of know how to kind of type of an approach to bring it up.
Yeah. So Jannelle, we're seeing funding for a lot of data gathering and education research being cut, and that's a lot of the work you've done in your career. And so talk to us about why that matters so much.
Yeah, that's a question that's on my mind constantly, which is, what are we going to do? Why does research matter to education? So I think the cuts that we're seeing, particularly in federal funding, but even as pressures are applied to states, I think it reflects, it's bringing out what we have as a love-hate relationship with data and research. We want it, we love it, and then we go, oh, but why is it so hard to collect the data? Why does it take so long to get the information? And why doesn't it apply to what I want to know right now? And I, actually think we can do a better job with all those things. We can do a better job with data that we use right away. I think in California, we're working on a state longitudinal data system that has much more responsiveness. I think about what happens in schools around, we collect a lot of data. A teacher's in a classroom and they go, well, I get this report with my test scores. And then if I, want something for attendance, I go somewhere else. And then I got this other report that told me he was chronically absent. And then I, went somewhere else and I got my school climate data. We make it really hard to think about the way those data points connect around the one student that the teacher is seeing in their classroom, and how do we know? And I actually think teachers are amazing data collectors, because one of the things they can tell you right off the bat is, how's a student doing? How are they learning? And that's data. And yet we've gotten overwhelmed with a whole lot of other data. And I think ultimately data is really important as a way to give us feedback, but it's only if we can see it as being reliable, valid, and having a return and impact. And so, that's something I care deeply about. And I hope that we find our path towards what we can do that makes a difference to student learning, to leaders feeling confidence, to policies being actually aligned to the outcomes we seek for the system.
I think that's really wonderful. As somebody who spends a lot of time in classrooms, it's always so important to remember that behind every piece of data is an actual real student. So really appreciate your take on that. And it actually transitions us perfectly into the next part of our game, because a lot of times teachers feel like there's a disconnect between what's happening directly in their classroom and policies discussions happening at the state or federal levels. So Kevin and Jannelle, you are both education policy and funding experts, but what do you know about classroom management techniques? Next, we're going to ask you each a question about classroom management, something that's probably not covered in School Finance 101. So Jannelle, this first question is for you. One of the best-selling education books of all time is a book about classroom management by Doctors Harry and Rosemary Wong. Is the title of this book A, The First Days of School, B, Pay Attention Now or Pay for It in Future Earning Potential, or C, Are You There, God? It's me, Margaret. I'm a teacher now, and I didn't realize how hard this damn job would be?
I am going to go with A. And it seems like the most safe answer here.
You are absolutely correct. It's A, The First Days of School. I've used it. Most teachers I know have used it, and it is a fantastic book. All right, next question, Kevin. In order to get their students' attention, teachers will often use a call and response method where they say the first line and the students say the second line to get the students to be quiet quickly. Which of the following is a popular call and response used mostly by elementary school teachers? Is it A, 1, 2, 3, eyes on me? Is it B, 4, 5, 6, let's hope the learning sticks? Or is it 6, 7, 8, shh, ice is at the front gate?
I like the questions you asked Jannelle better, but I would have to on this set go with A.
That is correct. It's 1, 2, 3, and the students yell, eyes on me. And I got to tell you, it works.
So a few more questions from the headlines. Jannelle, this next one is for you. The state of Oklahoma recently approved new social studies standards championed by State Superintendent and former history teacher Ryan Walters. These new standards require students to buy into what recent unproven theory?
Oh, gosh. Let's see. This is Oklahoma.
Let me know if you want a clue.
Well, unproven theory. Yeah, give me a clue.
Well, it has something to do with federal elections.
Oh, this is the that the elections were stolen, or that they were that the outcome of the election is in question.
Right. Oklahoma's new social studies standards will ask high school students to identify, quote, discrepancies in the 2020 election results. So everyone remembers what actually happened in the 2020 election, right?
Well, everyone except President Biden, maybe.
Ouch.
Too soon? Too soon?
Probably too soon. So the previous Oklahoma standard for studying the 2020 election asked students merely to, quote, examine issues related to the election and its outcome. But the new standards oddly and specifically ask students to, quote, identify discrepancies in 2020 election results by looking at graphs and other information, including the sudden halting of ballot counting in select cities in key battleground states, the security risks of mail-in balloting, an unforeseen record number of voters, sudden batch dumps, and the unprecedented contradiction of bellwether county trends. All of these are in the new standard.
Wow, Paul, you had me at sudden batch dumps.
So with these new standards, Oklahoma has, among other things, now doomed all of their future graduates to never successfully compete as contestants on Jeopardy! Unless, of course, they make Rudolph Giuliani the next host of Jeopardy! Hey, Tommy, any chance you and the band have something like a social studies standards blues? Nicely done. That's Tommy Dunbar and the high school equivalents. So, Kevin, this next question is for you. Some school districts have been turning to what type of unique and laughter-filled program as a way to further support students' social emotional learning and connection? And let me know if you'd like a clue.
Yeah, I definitely need a clue on that one.
All right. It's actually something near and dear to our podcast, although often it involves a microphone and a 2-drink minimum.
Oh my gosh. You got me stumped on this one.
It is a comedy program for students. So nearly 6,500 students and educators across 26 different schools and districts have taken part in a program called Laughing Together, co-founded in 2023 by Chris Gethard, a veteran comedian and improv teacher. And as reported by EdSource, mental health clinicians and professional comedians jointly developed the program's workshops based on exercises that can improve student mental health. I feel like the two of you would have probably done pretty good in a comedy class, though, yeah? In high school?
Well, it was school finance jokes, Paul. Absolutely.
Now, were you always into school finance, or did you know
I
this
like
path in high school?
I like to say that, when I was 6, I was identified as counting $1 bills really fast and flipping them in the right direction, all very deftly. And that's because my parents owned a store. So the teachers pulled me aside and they would have me count them lunch money. And then they'd say, do it again. And I thought that was reconciliation of like what my dad would have me do at the store. And so I'd do it again. And so if it's 6, your teachers identify you at really good at counting $1 bills, you have a choice of becoming a bookie or going into school finance.
All right. It is time for our final game, which is our rapid response round we call True, False, or What? So Alex is going to ask each of you a series of 3 questions in a row. And for each one, you have to tell us whether it's a true story, whether we just made it up, or you can simply shake your head and say, what? In this final game, each question will be worth 1 point, but if you get all 3 correct, you'll receive a bonus point. And before we start, I'm going to remind our listeners of the score. So Jannelle has 4 points and Kevin has 2.
Yikes.
However, due to some reported discrepancies and alleged late batch dump of points, the actual score now stands at Jannelle 4 and Kevin 3.
Oh, thank goodness.
So as a reminder, guests, whoever finishes with the fewest points gets held back and has to join us again for a future episode.
Oh, boy.
Well, all right. Well, Kevin, since you have the fewest points, we'll start with you. Number 1, true, false, or what? Independent School District in Missouri now operates on a 4-day week. Is that true or false?
Yeah, true.
That is correct. The district, with 14,000 students across 30 schools, transitioned to a 4-day school week in the 2023-24 school year. The decision was partly driven by a need to attract and retain teachers to address shortages. And for the first time in years, the district reports that all teaching positions have been filled and every course is offered. Okay, next question. True, false, or what? 11-year-old San Bernardino, California resident Elisa Perales graduated from college this year with associate degrees in multiple sciences and mathematics.
True.
11 years old, that is true. She graduated from Crafton Hills College in Yucaipa. Not surprisingly, she is the school's youngest graduate and among the youngest in state history. All right, last question for you, Kevin. True, false, or what? The name of the mascot at Yuma High School in Yuma, Arizona is the Criminals.
False.
Oh, that one is actually true, but I like your thinking.
Yikes.
I like your thinking.
Oh,
According to the school's website,
God.
in 1909, when Arizona was still a territory, Yuma High School opened. The next year, the school moved to the newly abandoned Yuma Territorial Prison, where it was located for the next 3 years until a new school was built. During that time, teachers conducted classes in the cell block area, and school assemblies were held in the prison hospital. Yuma High School has been proudly called the home of the criminals ever since.
Wow.
And it kind of gives a new twist to the school to prison pipeline, too, there.
All right, Paul, how many points did Kevin earn this round?
Kevin earned 2, so he now has the lead with 5 points to Jannelle's 4.
Ooh, okay, Jannelle, here we go. True, false, or what? The high school graduating class of 2025 is the largest and most diverse graduating class in U.S. history.
I would have to say false because we have a low birth rate period, I think.
Ah, that is actually true.
Oof.
3.9 million high schoolers are graduating, according to the Western Interstate Commission for Higher Education. Congratulations, 3.9 million graduates. Woo!
Yeah. If they all throw their caps in the air at the same time, it could blot out the sun.
All right, Jannelle, true, false, or what? Under a new law enacted by the Wyoming legislature, school districts cannot prevent a person from carrying a concealed gun into a public school building.
Oh my goodness. I am afraid the answer might be true, but I wanted to say what?
What is always an acceptable answer, and I'm afraid you're also correct. That's true. This winter, after multiple failed attempts, the Wyoming legislature passed House Bill 172, which does away altogether with those pesky things known as gun-free zones. The bill allows individuals who are lawfully carrying concealed weapons to carry them into any public elementary or secondary school facility or any public college or university. School districts that don't allow concealed carry of guns on school campuses will face significant penalties that carry a fine or jail time.
Man. And so if you bring your cell phone into class, you have to put it in a sleeve. But if you bring your gun, I guess you're good.
Holstered.
Holstered, right.
All right, last question, Jannelle. True, false, or what? A high school student at Alto High School in East Texas has had 11 straight years of perfect attendance going back to his pre-kindergarten class.
That's impressive, and I'm going to say yes.
You are correct. The student, Jabari, has not missed a day of class in his 11 years of schooling, going back to his pre-kindergarten days. In a Facebook post congratulating him, the school district said, let's also give a huge shout out to his parents, because let's be honest, getting a kid to school every single day for 11 years deserves a medal. Congratulations to Jabari and to your family. So, Paul, how did our contestants do?
So our final score was Jannelle 6 points and Kevin 5. And that means, Kevin, you have to come back and join us sometime in the future.
I think I laughed at more of your jokes, though. Wasn't there a bonus point for that?
Well, that's why the scoring worked out the way it did.
Well,
No, but Jannelle, we hope you will join us at some point as well.
Been a fun time, guys. Fun time.
And so to all of you, our millions of listeners, we hope you'll come back as well for the next Some of the Above Education News Comedy Quiz Show.
yes, indeed. We certainly hope you've laughed some, learned some, and are taking away some nuggets of wisdom you can pass off as your own.
And a very, very special thanks to our incredible guests, education funding and policy advocate extraordinaires, Kevin Gordon and Jannelle Kubinec.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Oh, that was good fun. That was good fun. Thanks for giving us something to end a day with.
And a huge thanks, as always, to our in-house band, Tommy Dunbar and the high school equivalents. Well, until next time, Alex.
Until next time, Paul.
So take us out, Tommy.